President Balch.
Here.
Trustee,
There we
there
go.
you are. Trustee Lambert.
Here.
Trustee Martin.
Here.
Trustee Pierce.
Here.
Trustee Wishaw.
Here.
Trustee McManus will arrive a little bit late.
Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of the village board meeting from July 21st, 2026?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the village board of July 21st, 2026.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Public comment provides a 2-minute opportunity for citizens to voice opinions to the village board. The village board cannot respond as this may conflict with open meeting requirements. Do we have anyone signed up? Jen? No, we do not. Okay. Presentation, item 6A, Root Pike Watershed Initiative Network.
Hello, my name is Christy Heiser, and I'm the program manager with the Root Pike Watershed Initiative Network. I know I've presented to and spoke to many of you throughout the years, but there are a few new faces. So if you aren't familiar with Root Pike Wind, we're the local 501c3 nonprofit that focuses on improving water quality in our tributaries that are draining into Lake Michigan. And we work with the Village of Caledonia through our Respect Our Waters program. So through your DNR permit, there is a portion that says you have to do education and outreach. And I am lucky enough to be the person that gets to go out and educate your citizens. And I'm here doing this presentation today because it was a new addition with the DNR that we should be having some more face time with our elected officials. So I appreciate you taking the next 10 minutes to kind of hear about what we do, the state of the Root River, and then things you can kind of keep an eye on as elected officials. So the first little experience that we bring around is our stormwater space. This one is focused on native plants and infiltrating stormwater. So you can see the kids act as the little rain clouds, and they are shooting water on these different surfaces that are on the next slide. And we talk about what happens when the stormwater hits the sewer and the pavement and all the pollutants that it brings into the rivers versus lawn and our deep-rooted native plants. And then the next display we have is the pet waste display. This is actually a very big issue in terms of bringing E. coli bacteria into the Root River and into Lake Michigan. So though picking up pet waste is not the only source of E. coli, it is a very manageable one and a message I have to keep repeating to the general public. So we have our little pet waste display where the kids are using scoopers and just kind of being trained for how to do the right thing for the future. The next one I typically bring around to schools. This is our watershed model where it is a deep dive into all of the different pollutants. There's different sprinkles and things that we put onto the display and then make it rain, and you can see how everything washes across the land into our rivers and then down into the lake. And it's a great display for kids and adults alike to see the impact that stormwater has on our water quality. And then the last display is new and continually improving is the salt display. Chloride levels are rising in all of our rivers and lakes throughout the state of Wisconsin. So bringing more awareness to chloride reduction is kind of moving up to the top of the list. And this focuses on, from the citizen perspective, how you can space out your salt more and alternatives to using salt in general. So that way they can do their part to reduce chloride contamination. And then here in the Root Pike Basin, this is the whole area that our organization serves. So you guys kind of get a little bit of both the Root River and the Wind Point watersheds here. And you can see how large of an area the Root River watershed is. That is everywhere in yellow. So many, many people have an impact on the quality of water in the Root River watershed. And it says impaired across that because all of our rivers down here are on the 303D impaired waters list. So this is coming from the Environmental Protection Agency. And it essentially means we have too many of these different pollutants that I'm going to touch on quickly from our stormwater entering the river. So the Root River watershed specifically is landed on this list for excess phosphorus. So phosphorus is an issue because that's ultimately what is causing your algae blooms in your rivers and your lakes and your stormwater ponds. So when I'm focusing with the citizens, it's can you manage your grass clippings and your leaves and keep them out of the storm sewer? Can you use phosphorus-free fertilizers or no fertilizers at all? The next big pollutant is going to be sediment. So that is coming from possibly construction sites. It could be coming from agriculture fields that aren't using cover crops and these regenerative practices. And a lot of it is just from the energy of the stormwater that is rushing into the rivers. So you can see in that picture, the water that's coming out of the stormwater pond kind of looks like chocolate milk versus what is coming out of, that's the restored branch of the Pike River right there. But it looks completely different, and that's a big issue that we'd like to mitigate with time so we can get off this list. And then chloride contamination, I already touched on, but that's a perfect example of what I see throughout the watershed, and unfortunately is way too much salt. So from the municipal side, well, I'll touch on that later. And then our last one is going to be E. coli bacteria, which I already mentioned. Big issue with that is it's causing beach closures in Milwaukee, Racine, and Kenosha, especially along Lake Michigan shoreline. And then the last reason that the Root River is landed on the impaired waters list is going to be just degraded habitats and low dissolved oxygen levels. So if you are not into the ecosystem perspective or you're not into fishing necessarily, this one might be lower on the list. But you can kind of see the difference between, this is the Lamprecht Creek restoration that was just done in the Pike River watershed, what it looked like before, also considered a degraded habitat, invasive species, that chocolate milky water, very low dissolved oxygen, barely any fish in there, versus what the restoration looked like year one after. So it's making some good progress. And then the next thing is just a few things as elected officials that you can focus on, especially as you're improving your parks plans and as new developments are coming across your desk. So the first is just increasing the amount of native landscaping that we have across the watersheds. So in the little red box, that is going to be standard turf grass that's going about 2 to 5 inches underneath the ground, so very shallow. And it doesn't provide any habitat, soak up stormwater. It's not providing us fuel, so very overused, versus the deep-rooted native prairie plants that are going about 6 to 15 feet underneath the ground. And you can see on the next slide just how much of this beautiful sponge network is formed underneath the ground when we have these native plants back in place that used to just soak up this water for us. And the more we can soak up water right where it lands, the less of those pollutants that are going to make their way into our rivers and lakes. And then the next is just improved stormwater pond designs. So this book was sent out a few years ago, back in like 2023, where we work with different engineers to say kind of what are these solutions that are going to improve water quality, and then also what is the cost aspect to them. And that is an example of a stormwater pond that we'd like to see change. So that's pretty standard, where it's the oval shape and the grass up to the edges and just filled with geese. So that is bringing that E. coli issue, the phosphorus issue from the grass clippings, the sediment from the wave action and the ice action. So ways that we could improve that would be just by improving the pond buffer. So instead of using just your standard lawn, if you could put in the deep-rooted native plants, it doesn't necessarily have to be this beautiful prairie mix. It could simply be just a grass mix. So the aesthetics are still pretty similar, but you're getting the benefits of those deep roots as well. The alternative to a stormwater pond would be to use a regenerative stormwater conveyance system, and I have a few different examples of where we've been able to work these in throughout the watershed. This is an example working with DOT, where it was going to be a standard pond, and the conversation was able to happen early enough where they swapped over to this regenerative stormwater conveyance system, which is essentially just this series of rain gardens. You could think of it kind of hooked up in parallel, and the water flows into them, and then it all infiltrates within a few days of a storm. So there's a great example. That one's right on the Kenosha County, Racine County border on Green Bay Road. And then where it was put in on a much smaller scale was at UW Parkside. It's essentially just in a ditch line on their campus. And that was an area they were really focusing on how they can improve water quality into the Pike River. Specifically, they were looking at slowing the flow of chlorides into the water. So that's another example where it can really just blend into the landscape and instead of updating a pond. And the next one is a larger example that just went in this past year, working with Shoreland Lucent High School. You can see everything in yellow. That whole footprint is a very large regenerative stormwater conveyance system that empties into a constructed wetland. And on your own time, there is a video you can click and get a full flyover, but we don't need to see that now. But this is showing you what they were planning on doing. So they were just going to be doing these 2 giant ponds with 2 giant berms, and it wasn't really great for what they wanted to do with their cross-country course and trail opportunities at the school. and they were able to rework things. And now their regenerative stormwater conveyance system is in and working incredibly well, and that native vegetation is starting to fill into the area. So the next step is getting a trail system around it. And here's what it looked like in April this year when we got all of that rain. You can see how it fills up, and then within 3 days, that water was completely infiltrated back into the ground. And the next slides are just what's happening in the surrounding community. So these are some citizen pictures that we've received over the years where their properties completely got blown out every large storm event, versus this year they were very happy to see that things are kind of back in check now that that system was put into place. And then alternatives, if you are going to go for more of a stormwater pond design, if you could consider just a constructed wetland, since our wetlands are being taken away rapidly here throughout Wisconsin, especially in southeastern Wisconsin. This is an example from Shoreland Lutheran, so it doesn't look very exciting in year one, but you can kind of see during construction how there's those different topographies in the pond, and then it's planted with native vegetation that mimics a wetland that has been removed in the area. The next big thing as elected officials that you can do is attend these SaltWise training workshops. We partner with Wisconsin SaltWise to really educate the DPW staff. And I know DPW staff is attending all of these and doing a really great job. And the one thing that keeps getting brought up throughout the watershed is, could we get more elected officials involved and educated on this stuff, since you guys are kind of fielding the calls from the public, especially when it comes to salt. It's always a very hot issue. So you'll be invited. We'll be doing another one with them probably in September or October. So I will send those along as they come. And some other things that they talk about in these workshops is the different brine systems, different plow blades, calibration. So that picture is an example of before a truck was calibrated versus after. And you can see just by doing that how that salt pile really just dropped down, which is not only great for our water quality, but great for the amount of money and that is spent on salt and just our roads and infrastructure as well. And then they also touch on pavement sensors, weather stations, cameras, snow and ice policy, and all of these other pieces of the puzzle that come into chloride management. And then lastly, projects in the Root River Watershed Restoration Plan. I see you guys are talking Turtle Creek tonight. I know that's Wind Point Watershed. But if there's ever any interest in more discussions on the Root River Watershed, there's a whole layout in here of different different projects and education plans that are in here that could definitely be integrated more into Caledonia. And the last slide is just a recap of what I just talked about, focusing on those native plants, different stormwater pond designs, smart salting, and then continuing to do great work restoring your watersheds here. Thank you. Any questions? Me too. Yes. One day we'll get there. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. We're going to move on to ordinances and resolutions. 7A, Resolution 2026-079, authorizing the Village of Caledonia to enter into an agreement for fire and EMS services between the Village of Caledonia and the Village of Wind Point.
I move to adopt Resolution 2026-079.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion or resolution passes. 7B, Resolution 2026-080, approving the Village of Caledonia 2027 wage scale. It was at the Committee of the Whole and passed 4-0.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2026-080.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Yes.
Okay, I've been around the board a long time, so I know some of the history that's has taken place in the past with our wage schedule. We switched to a merit-based system quite a while ago. And we assigned, based on a finance and personnel committee, approved by the board, a process to go through this. Adjustments in salaries and adjustments in levels of where that employee fits. So I'm not, I went through the suggested changes here, and there's some very large changes in levels, and some of the levels were eliminated. To make a long story short, this needs a lot more noodling before we adopt it. I read through the study here, and one of the things it says, compensation philosophy, the Village of Caledonia's
Compensation.
compensation philosophy is still developing and will be informed by this project. Well, still developing, I'm not sure what that's referring to. We have a process that was passed long ago to handle this, so this cannot go forward until we've reviewed. It doesn't sync up, from what I can tell, with our process that we approved in 2016. So I don't know why we would pass anything until we go through that at committee level and determine where the differences are, because I've seen quite a few in the short time I had to look at this. So I will vote no until this goes back to finance and personnel to review the details of what's in this study versus what we passed at board level.
I also have a comment. One, it was extremely difficult to look at it. I called Todd and he was helpful in walking through it, but we have charts, but you can't tell, there's no comparison and you can't tell the fiscal impact of this. And so I agree with Lee, until I know what the fiscal impact is and how it fits, I really am not going to vote yes on it either. This is putting in place a wage scale and with no ability to discern how it actually affects it. I was told by Todd, and I don't doubt this, that this particular one affects only 5 people who are out of sync in this wage scale, but nevertheless, we're raising the overall wage scale overall substantially. So I agree with Lee. I think it needs more work.
This should go back to committee level. We'll review the resolution that we passed 10 years ago, and then come back and review the chart that's been proposed here and decide where we want to go from there. But as far as I can tell, the resolution that we passed at board level in 2016 has almost no bearing on what's taking place here.
I agree. I will, could I do this? If I move to send this back to finance for further review.
Well, we've already got
Yeah, we do have
a
a
motion
motion.
and a second. We have to
Right.
deal with that one first.
So before,
I will agree on the philosophy question.
are we,
Excuse me.
are we concerned about, is anyone concerned about adopting a wage scale, or is it the changes to the existing wage scale that is the concern?
Well, it's both. For me, it's both.
both.
But the big thing is, it seems to me we're not considering what we passed as our policy in 2016. Why have a policy and a process? It lays out a process is how we go about doing the review of the wage chart and the salary schedule.
And we looked at the wage scale less than a year and a half ago.
But we, I
It
mean,
gets updated every year.
wage
Yeah.
scales do change. So my understanding of this, and maybe we're going to be hamstrung by not having Amanda here, but that this was taking the wage scale and changing some of the values in it to reflect current market studies. In which case it seems to be more benign, but maybe there's more there than I see.
Well, I'm saying let's go back to committee level. Not one other board member's even read through this resolution or is even aware of it.
Not the
This-
2016 that wasn't attached.
Let's
This
get
this
some,
lays out the process to go through this.
that's the
And
old
and
one.
maybe this chart will be fine. Well, let's make sure it lines up with what we've already passed.
You have
Your assessment was correct. It is
Who's
looking at,
you? me?
yes,
Okay.
it's just changing the wages based on the competitive market and moving them from 2026 to 2027. Doing that in front of the budget discussions so that then, to Trustee Wishaw's other concern, those conversations can happen during that portion. That was also part of my conversation with Trustee Martin this afternoon, or this morning, whenever she called.
Do we have,
This chart, though, eliminated some levels, it moved some people up several levels. We've got a policy to do that. We should review that policy that we passed first before we make any changes to this chart.
I mean, that's a board policy decision to make. But I think in Amanda's report, she did mention that there were titles and job titles that weren't actually being used anymore, and those were eliminated, changed to other job titles, and utilizing job descriptions to understand where they're placed in their grade level. Again, that's a
is there,
board policy.
is there an urgency to doing this right now?
Not necessarily, because we don't actually start having our budget conversations until September 1st. I
if we-
believe.
if we
It's
push it
handed
back-
to you guys, and
If
then
we push it back to a committee that meet once a month, we could be 4 weeks,
well,
4 or 5 weeks away.
I know Trustee Wishaw said finance and personnel, but there is actually no personnel
There's
committee to be
finance.
having
Right.
a conversation about that. So it would be going just back to finance. I know we had a discussion at finance on a special meeting.
Mhm.
We could certainly add this and take it up in a orderly fashion so that we have it back before, maybe the next meeting, or before we start going through that budgetary process, which starts after the submission to the village board of the budget on September 1st, I believe is what our calendar had.
Send it back to finance then. I'm fine with that.
Okay.
At least
We
let's
gotta
do
vote on-
the review that we need to do.
As
We
long-
need to vote, I think, on
Yeah,
the
we-
existing motion.
we will need to,
Vote. You want roll call?
It's essentially, I believe, there was the secondary motion to table it and have it sent back to committee. I don't know if that motion was seconded, but if it is, then that would take priority over the motion on the floor. And so you wouldn't have to go through the mechanics of withdrawing the previous motion.
Then I will second the amended motion if it isn't showing for Jen.
Okay.
No, Fran.
I made the
Fran made the
motion.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. All righty. Just getting warmed up. 2020, Resolution 2026-081, approving payments under the termination agreement with CCM Caledonia LLC and Cardinal Capital Management, Inc. for lands within Tax Incremental District Number 5. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve that?
I don't think anybody wants to
To,
make that
to
motion.
make a motion to approve it so we can discuss it and vote yes or no.
All right, I will make a motion to approve Resolution 2026-081.
I'll second.
Okay. Any comments, questions?
I snuck in like a ninja.
Yes?
Fran had one, I know.
Yes, I think there's more than one. Fran,
We're somewhat handicapped here because some of the discussions relating to this took place in a closed session. So I'm trying to be very careful about what I say here. But, and I have looked at the written agreement, which unfortunately does not comport with what I understood to be what we had discussed in closed session. So I have a serious problem with this. But I do understand that there is a written agreement. That's my comment.
You got
No,
a comment?
go ahead.
I think I'm sort of in the same line as Fran, that there was a lot of discussion in a closed session about why we would take on these expenditures, and that there was supposed to be some value that would come back to the village in expending this amount of money. That personally, I have a hard time seeing it play out.
Well, it also had to do with the timing of payment. And that timing, as I'm being careful here, the timing as discussed does not comport with the written agreement, but the written agreement is there. Unfortunately, I've looked at it.
is it
And
the
I can ask
opinion,
Mr. Pruitt his
Sorry.
view of what that agreement is.
Okay, so your outside counsel put together the termination agreement that's referenced in the resolution.
Correct.
And that termination agreement with CCM Caledonia requires Caledonia to assume the obligations that were owed to the architect and the engineer, and it has the two amounts in that agreement, 205,000 plus and 95,000 plus. Since that time, I believe your village administrator negotiated that $95,000 amount down, so it's what's in your resolution now. There's nothing in that termination agreement that I can see that talks about the timing of those payments. And I believe there was some discussion at prior meetings about where that money was going to come from, and perhaps the timing would be delayed until increment was produced, for example, in
Right.
that development. That's not addressed in the termination agreement. I also understand that the other parties related to this transaction are perhaps headed toward litigation, and that this is an opportunity for Caledonia to make the payments that it agreed to make, just make it earlier than what apparently you expected. That's my understanding.
And is it also your understanding that there is not, in fact, a side agreement with the other parties that would allow the delay of the payment?
The only thing I'm seeing is the termination agreement that's referenced in your resolution, and there's nothing in there that says when those payments have to be made. It just says you're obligated to pay them. It doesn't say when.
And the timing here is to avoid litigation.
Right. My understanding is that it's headed in that direction, and that Caledonia would be brought in because it assumed the obligation for those two payments. And, you'd be, dealing with the court aspects of that and talking about when those payments ought to be made.
I guess what I'm going to say is I think it's accurate. I think that we would be implemented. That is that if Cardinal gets sued, they would bring us in to the lawsuit. And
Probably, I don't know. This is all somewhat vague
Speculate, I
because
know.
you've got outside counsel that's handling this and that put together this agreement, but I'm just looking at what I can see. It doesn't address the timing of the payment. I know you had a discussion in closed session, and it looks like it's headed toward court. And at some point in time, you're going to have to make these payments. So the thought process, I believe, was to make it now, and for that reduced amount that was negotiated, and you'd be done with this then.
Are we guaranteed to avoid litigation if we make these payments?
I don't know. I don't know if anybody else has any, claims that they could come up with that might bring the village in. Those are great questions to ask the council that was handling the matter. But my understanding is that the agreement was that all the obligations to CCM were terminated. Caledonia agreed to take on the responsibility for the payment due to the architect and the engineer. I don't know if anybody else has any potential claims against the village for other things that may have happened in that development. I just don't know.
in a way, that wouldn't matter because the agreement says that we have taken on that obligation. That's
Correct.
the unfortunate truth that I'm wrestling with, but I'm afraid that I'm just going to have to vote to pay it because that's the agreement we have. That's the agreement we signed.
We voted on it. We voted on that termination agreement, basically. We voted to make those two payments.
Correct. We thought there was,
Some of us didn't like it and voted no, but yes, the board approved those
Right.
payments. So I don't know
Right.
that there's anything we can do.
I don't think there is. I
say we
thought
don't
at
like
least
it.
that there was in fact a side agreement, and that turns out that that's not the case. So we're hung with it.
Any other comments or questions, concerns? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion or resolution passes.
Unhappily.
Unhappily.
Yes.
Unhappily.
Hold your nose and say aye.
Yeah.
Resolution 2026-082, authorizing the Village of Caledonia to enter into a professional services agreement with the Caledonia Utility District and Resource Environmental Solutions for the Turtle Creek Restoration Project.
Any words of wisdom, Tony?
Sure, if
Do
you
we
guys would
need-
like.
Do we
We're
need a
looking at
motion
you.
first?
Well, essentially, this agreement is with RES, which is the design engineer of the project. We are getting close to going out to bid for this project. We're looking to do that yet this fall. And when we do go out to bid, we are going to need to have a construction management component to it. That's what this contract does. Their services for construction management of the entire project is $53,750. This would be money that would come out of the utility district budget and its contribution towards the project. Now, just so the board is aware, this is a grant-funded project as well. There is $447,000 worth of grants that are being attributed to this project. Reason for the kind of the hurry up in this is that those grants will expire June of next year. So we want to make sure we get this project done, installed, and taken care of so we can utilize those grant funds.
I will move to approve Resolution 2026-082.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Resolution passes. Resolution 2026-083, authorizing the payment of subrogation claim to Allstate Property and Casualty Insurance Company for claim of Melissa Wilger.
I'll move to approve Resolution 2026-083.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
No, I think somebody got backed into. It was a parked car that got hit, so there really was no argument about
Yep.
our liability.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Resolution passes. New business, approval of AP checks.
Mr. President, I move to approve AP checks totaling to $639,079.91.
Second.
Any discussion?
Well, I have an issue on one of them.
Go for it.
I know that apparently we've already paid it, but we really have got to get a handle on our legal bills, because this one from Von Briesen is, again, we're at $12,580, and I can't even qualify, honestly, what's listed as the work performed.
I absolutely agree. I had the same question, and Todd and I think Wayne and I had a discussion about that. The lack of specificity is shocking to me, and I don't recall any legal advice during that time period. I understand that counsel was there, but
I think it's time for a moratorium on any more legal advice from that particular legal
I agree.
law firm.
I agree.
So a question for staff. Do we have a standard practice around the amount of detail required on an invoice? Do we have any standard practice rules?
No, there's no standard practice rule.
Do we have any random application of something? I mean, do we ever kick an invoice back because it's insufficient in terms of detail?
Which we did, and they did provide additional
For
detail.
this invoice? But
Yes.
did we do that because of board feedback, or is there a desire by the staff to try to get a little bit more buttoned up on that, just to be good citizens?
Generally not, because the staff is the one who's requesting the work, so they're aware of the work. The issue is that the board is not always aware of the work, so that's why we,
But
You
staff,
requested
but
more
staff
and we
can, but
requested
staff can change, and so it makes for good audit trail to know what an invoice was paid out for to the new person that doesn't remember.
In
So-
addition, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, in addition, because Wayne and I spoke about this as well, and my understanding is that that the initial invoice simply gave the charge with no detail at all, and when you asked for something more detailed, you got something and it was reduced.
well, it had information, it had dates and the service performed, but it was very, very limited as
Okay,
far as
so,
the detail.
But the dollar amount was reduced.
Correct.
After you asked for more detail.
oh, it did change?
Yes.
Okay.
By $400, I
Okay.
think.
So Jen has tapped me on the shoulder and said we need to get back to the agenda item, which is approving this amount. But before we move on after that, I want to ask a couple more questions. Is that fair? They're tangentially related.
If it's related to the approval of this checklist, yes. If it is about directing staff or guiding policy, I would ask that you would refer that to the finance committee.
Okay.
I think
I
Tim
will do
Pruitt
that.
can tell us the expanse of the possible
Yeah, I
discussion.
think you need to stick to the
Okay,
AP.
that's
thing.
fine.
And then I think you do have that on your other agenda, you could add things that you want to talk about in future meetings, including this. I would,
We'll bring it up in the committee of the whole where that is going to come up as a topic. Is that fair? Okay, so we have, is there any other discussion on the AP checks? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. AP checks are approved. All right, 8B, Cooperative Boundary Agreement Review, review and possible action, a proposed building site and operation plan for a 5,700 square foot addition to the storage building located at 2720 West 7 Mile Road, Village of Raymond, submitted by Scott Niles, applicant 7 Mile Fair, Inc., owner, parcel ID, blah, blah, blah. More information at Caledonia Zoning Hub, URL included. So this went to the Planning Commission, and we had a bit of discussion there, and the result of that discussion was for the Planning Commission to provide no recommendation. And the reason why is our staff did the job that it was supposed to do, which was to apply our own standards to the proposal. But the real discussion, I thought, anyway, and the majority of the Planning Commission agreed, the real decision is, do we care about what they're doing there? And I'll try to explain that. So yes, the staff is correct in that it doesn't meet all of the guidelines that we've put together. If this were a project in our own backyard, we would say, no, go back to the drawing board and fix this, that, and the other. But it's out of sight. It's consistent with the buildings that they have. Raymond has approved it. And the question really was to send it to the board to say, does the board even care? If it's out of sight, out of mind, if it's consistent with their building, if they're happy with it, it's just an outbuilding that's going to have a tractor in it or whatever, a storage building at the west end of 7 Mile Fair. Do we want to do that? We've already spent the time, that's kind of unfortunate, doing all the analysis. And maybe there's a bigger discussion on the other end of this about how to actually administer the Raymond border agreement. But tactically, we have this one presentation here, and the Plan Commission has sent to the board to say, do you guys care? The staff is saying it doesn't meet our standards, but it's now up for a board discussion to say, do we let Raymond go ahead, or do we continue down the path of applying our standards to this one project?
I think this one is an exception to the rule from planning. I mean, to our border agreement and to our standards, because we're talking about extension of an existing building, has no water, no power, is completely behind trees and stuff, can't be seen. So what are we doing to this person who's asking to develop this building or add on to it?
My only concern would be, and I'll ask Tim, whether our construing that agreement has the effect in any way of negating it or weakening our ability to enforce it in other circumstances. That would be my concern.
You're spot on. I think that that's the danger, I think, when you decide not to apply the standards in this situation. You're going to be faced with a question from someone else saying, well, you waived it there, can't you do it here? So if there's situations similar, you're kind of, you're kind of bound, I think, by precedent to treat people the same. And I think that's the danger. So if you decide that there's a project coming up in Raymond that you feel very strongly about, I think you're setting yourself up for the argument that you're just being arbitrary in deciding when you're going to apply the design standards and when you're not. And I think that's the danger. And there's nothing wrong in saying, we're going to spend some time and we want to go back to Raymond and say, this is a class of developments we really don't care about. if it's previously been approved and it's, you're expanding something that's already gone through the process, we're okay with that. And then now you've taken action, but I think if you do it a kind of on a case-by-case basis, that's where the danger is. That you're tying your hands when you really do want to apply it later on.
So what motion will we need to do that?
My understanding is they went up from Plan Commission without a recommendation, so the question is whether you want to approve it or not. Staff is recommending no. If you decide that you don't want to, I think you need to come up with some rationale in your discussion. And then my understanding is staff's going to come back then at the next meeting with a resolution that incorporates your findings and your decision, so that you won't actually be deciding tonight. You'll be giving staff direction to say, yeah, we don't want this to happen, or yes, we're okay with it for these reasons. And then staff can develop a resolution that will hopefully not, tie your hands the next time.
Did you have something, Pete?
He answered the question that I was going to say. So I really don't have much more to add on that. The part that I was going to talk about was the resolution coming at next village board meeting. And in past practice, when there was a no recommendation, which is, I can count on one hand that happened, typically the staff would write a resolution with staff's recommendations, and then the board would try to amend the resolution, and it got really ugly as you have 6, 7 people trying to wordsmith a resolution. So that's why we went through this process where now this village board will take a look at it, give village board staff direction to write a resolution either in favor or in opposition. The key thing I want to make a point is that one of the reasons has to be the spectacular development language that we've used in the past, because that's what's part of the agreement, that it's a spectacular development that doesn't require the development to connect to sewer and water. And so I do have that language in front of me that we've used before when we've approved boundary agreement reviews. So if the board wants to vote in favor, I can share that language with you, so that way you have that similar language where basically, I'll read it to you. It says, a proposed use meets the intent of the Village of Caledonia's development standards, and find that the proposed use is a spectacular use for this parcel without connecting to sewer and water in accordance with the cooperative boundary agreement between the Villages of Caledonia and Raymond. So I would recommend that if you are looking to approve this proposal, you use that language as at least one of the reasons, so that way we're in compliance with the boundary agreement. And then if there's any other findings of fact this board has to say is why it should be approved, include that as well.
I think that's still problematic, am I right? I think what we would like to do, I'm not sure how to do it, would be to direct staff to review this and to determine whether this is a particularly exceptional situation in which we therefore would approve it.
I mean, I don't know if you made that previous finding for 7 Mile Fair. Previously, I've determined that it was a spectacular development and was allowed to come in, such that you don't necessarily, I mean, do you need to do that for every time they do an addition?
Well, no, this is not actually on the 7 Mile Fair big buildings. It's actually across the road. So it is tangentially part of 7 Mile overall, but it's not on that big piece of property.
The way that it's written, any additional benign building that you add to a property would never pass the spectacular clause,
Right.
ever.
Well, in this particular case,
Yes, it would.
the reconfiguration
all
of the
do.
frontage road actually has made that building a separate parcel, which that building is now a principal structure,
Yeah, but.
which is
but you're-
different than if it was just an accessory building on the 7 Mile
Right,
Fair. If that was
right.
one whole
That's-
parcel, the same conversation would not be happening. But because this is a principal structure on this separate parcel, that's why it's getting held to that standard.
Which is, what's the word I want?
It's unfair to the owner.
It's,
to the
well, it's
person.
unfair to the owner, but it's a technicality. I mean, if there was no road there, we'd be fine with it. If there's a road there, all of a sudden it has to be spectacular.
Well,
That doesn't make any sense, and if I were the owner, I would be irritated by that.
well, and remember, he can't meet the landscape requirements because of the road. So, I mean, it's physically impossible for him to actually meet some of our requirements.
Well, that's why I don't think we can just say it doesn't make sense, because I think we're endangering the agreement in other circumstances, and I don't think we want to do that
What
at
would we
this
do?
point.
Pete, what would we do if this was in our boundary?
At this point, the way it's presented, it would not have gone to Plan Commission, as it would have been found to be unacceptable submittal for site plan submitted, which is just an aerial map you see up on the screen.
But
The-
is that just a documentation problem?
No, it,
You know what they're trying to build, right?
yeah,
They've
they're
described,
adding
they've
addition-
described it to you. Is there a path in Caledonia to approving what they want to build if it were in Caledonia?
a metal building on a parcel in Caledonia would not be accepted, as it would not meet the requirements unless the Plan Commission approved it with a 3/4 majority approval. We do provide some flexibility on a case-by-case situation. In this particular case, we don't have the 3/4 majority, but I always encourage that the majority of the Plan Commission approve if they're going to have the same exterior materials to match an existing building. In this particular case, being a principal building, it's an addition. However, we would have said we needed some sort of articulation or painting of the building in its entirety to show a middle, top, and bottom to meet our building design standards. We would have went through a more rigorous review before it would have gone to Plan Commission. But to approve a corrugated metal building, that would not have been
Was-
supported by the Plan Commission, probably, I would like to think, and then staff would not be approving. Or
But-
Is it visible from the road?
No,
Mr. President.
it's not.
Yes.
If you, up on the
It's
screen
not.
is an aerial map the applicant submitted. There's the frontage road that is there. There's a parking lot, and then there's the building.
If it's not visible from the road, isn't that an exception that,
You can see it from the
You
road,
can see it. You can see it from that curvy road, but.
from the frontage road, the west frontage
Holly a
road.
chance here.
I forgot what we've talked about in closed session and what we haven't, but I don't care for the boundary agreement, period. I think Raymond should be able to develop their community without us having a say in it if they deem it appropriate, but at the same time, we can't have the best of both worlds. Either we agree with what's being presented that's in accordance with our rules and ordinances, or we don't. And so as long as we're gonna hold this Raymond agreement in place and abide by it and ensure that it's being followed, I think we have to follow staff's recommendation and deny it until they can bring it before us when it's in compliance with our ordinance. That's the only fair way we can do this. We can't have our cake and eat it too. If we wanna make Raymond abide by it, we gotta do it all the time. Otherwise, why are we holding this Raymond?
But we
Contact.
we override our own standards all the time, which is why I'm asking the line of questioning to Pete that I am. Under what conditions would either the Plan Commission or the board override that? And is that possible? Or would we just default to a no?
Well, I think Pete's,
Hold on, I want him to answer.
In the report, the design guide standards where there was does not meet the standard, or there was Plan Commission discretion allowed for. So for number 2, the street edge landscaping, there is an actual part of the site, that, I don't know if you can see my cursor up on the screen, south of the parking lot, that there could be some sort of screening of the dock door as well as that addition from the frontage road. There could have been changes to the site plan. The applicant chose to take the approach that it did not apply. The four-sided architecture, we did indicate that Plan Commission has discretion to say that, due to various reasons of the Plan Commission's so choosing, they could provide a reason why the four-sided architecture does not need to meet the standards as presented in Exhibit K. As for the roof style materials, it was also the Plan Commission discretion whether or not the metal roof is acceptable type of materials. Number 6, building mass height formation. This is one where staff said it did not meet because there was no banding or articulation that showed some type of form that was showing the top and middle and bottom. So there was an opportunity for the Plan Commission, if they decided to that evening, to look at each of those and say, hey, there is a rationale to say that in this particular case, but at that time, the Plan Commission moved it up with no recommendation, and now at the village board,
But
you
can
guys
the
have
bo-
it.
Can the board say that?
You can, yes, you can say, if you can provide a rationale, the only rationale I'm suggesting is you include that spectacular language in there.
Mhm.
As for the rest, it's up to the board to do that, and then we will write it up, and then you guys can approve it based on that. Now, with that said, Tim has mentioned that, there's a precedent setting, and you may be called out later saying, hey, you said this was exceptional, spectacular and you kind of just glossed over some of these standards. Now, are you going to be expected to do that in the future? So that's really the issue I think Fran has brought up, is that if we do give this one a pass, are we setting ourselves up for when the next bigger project comes through and we want to hold them to the standards, they're going to be like, well, you guys kind of just make a decision on a case-by-case situation, and that's up to the board. That's not staff's decision. Excuse me. How to do it.
Is there,
Prescott,
Yes.
can I ask Tim a question?
Yeah.
Tim, did I, in my hearing over here, hear you say that one option might be to go back to Raymond and basically say, we understand why you approve this because it's minimal, whatever, and we can agree, if you are asking us to do this particular one without addressing our standards because it benefits you specifically, we could do that.
Yes, you heard me say that. So the agreement with Raymond, it obligates them to, there were standards put in place. There was a land use plan that was put in place at the time of this agreement went in, way back when. If Raymond wants to amend the design standards on its side of the I, they need a permission from Caledonia. So if there are some like classes of, once something's up and we're not as, we don't care as much for different reasons why, for example, all the reasons that have been discussed tonight. I mean, you could go back and change the agreement. It could be amended. That land use plan and the design standards can all be amended with permission from the Village of Caledonia. So
For
if there's
this one project.
then not just for the one project, but just for a class of projects that meet these standards, we don't really want to spend our time looking at these developments that come through that have already been previously approved and now they're doing an addition. We're okay, you handling that on your own. You could make that decision and make that change so that you don't have those things coming before you and still preserve the option to fight about what really matters to you in terms of the quality of the developments that are coming forward that actually have greater impacts.
Thank you.
Do we have to make a decision on this tonight? Do we have to make a decision on this tonight?
I don't know, Pete, if you have a input on that.
The applicant has not expressed a particular deadline, but as all applicants do, is they want the approval yesterday, not next month. I know when I first started here, there was an a building, an existing apartment complex that wanted to go, and when my first meeting was, we are in month 18 of deciding whether or not we want to approve this apartment complex. And I have concern if we do this, that, are we just stringing along the applicant for any length of time? So yes, you can, defer this and table it for a future for further discussion, or you want to recommend it back to Plan Commission for discussion and for decision, and then come back with a recommendation and have the Plan Commission hash it out. That's definitely something this board could do. But no, there is no deadline that says they have to do it. It's not like a particular review where you have 90 days, otherwise it's automatically approved.
Okay.
We don't have that kind of.
I would not recommend sending this back to the Planning Commission because I think it's this board that needs to decide because it's the boundary agreement. That's the issue, and the future criticism or complaints that we're unfairly treating each project. But I don't think we're gonna have the smartest answer if we try to force a decision on it right now.
But Mr. President, respectfully, I think if we send it back to our employees, our staff to work with this applicant and Raymond, there obviously have to be some changes that fall within our guidelines, and the applicant may be willing to do those. And so if we send this back to staff, it's not saying it can't come back before us, but I think the applicant deserves an answer tonight. And I would make a motion to send this back to staff for the denial and work with the applicant on how they could possibly get this to fall within our ordinance.
I think that's a fair point. I don't think the planning commission is the one that we need to send it back to.
No, I think our
Sending it back to the
staff.
Staff is perfectly
And then,
fine.
you know, if the applicant really wants us to go through it, I think there's a way we can come and figure this out. So
I'm
that's
on
my
board.
motion.
I'll second it. I agree with Holly.
How
Whoa.
about that?
It's like
Must be the hat.
Oh, we agree more than you think.
No, I don't.
I do too.
Not on the record.
Well, it's on the record now. Is there any other discussion? I think that so you've made a motion to send 2026-083, no, sorry, the cooperative boundary agreement, it's new business, 8B. You're making a motion to send 8B back to staff to work with the developer?
It was also a
Yeah.
denial too.
Yes.
Well, it
I
was to
heard
deny
deny.
what's in front of us.
Okay,
And send it back, just to follow staff's recommendation, send it back to staff if the applicant is interested, that staff work with the applicant to be in compliance with our ordinance. To be spectacular, I guess, I don't, or ask for or ask for approvals that you mentioned that may be different, the landscaping or whatever that the committee would have, but at least give us a guidance on what the applicant is willing to work with us on. So.
Sorry,
think
can I
he's
just
got it.
suggest
Yeah,
that with that motion, that the rationale for that motion would be for the reasons
Yes,
that the
stated
staff
by-
recommended
yes.
denial?
Yes.
Okay.
I just think I understand what Fran's saying, but the party we're hurting here is the individual. But I'm only one.
At the cost of,
It's okay to have different opinions. I'll lose.
any other discussion? Okay, before we ask for all those in favor, can we tell them what they're eyeing or
Yeah.
naying?
Yeah, I kind
Just
of
to
had
be-
to
Sorry.
condense the wording a little bit.
That's
So please
fine.
tell me if this does not accurately reflect your motion. Motion by trustee McManus to deny the proposal and direct staff to work with the applicant to resolve the design deficiency.
Works for me.
Pete, does that
And we'll follow the
adequately?
recommendation made by staff, right?
We'll have to send it back through plan commission and or board if the applicant makes a change, right?
Right, if there's modifications made, right now, it's up to the discretion of the board. If, the motion is to return, this review, direct staff to work with the applicant to comply with Exhibit K, and then bring it back before the village board for discussion.
yeah, don't bring
Yes.
it back to the planning
Yes.
commission.
Yes.
That's an
And so that way
unnecessary
I
step.
know that we just bring it,
Correct.
bring
Right.
this back
Yeah.
at the 18th meeting, the September
As
2nd,
as soon
meeting,
as you
first?
can.
Mhm.
at the next meeting.
At the
Yeah.
next meeting.
All right, so the only concern I had, Jenny, when you said the motion to deny, staff's denial,
You have a better.
I don't know, it sounds like the
No,
motion was
staff's
to deny.
recommendation. You made it says that you recommended that we not approve this.
Correct, that was the
That's what
staff's
I'm-
recommendation,
That's what I'm agreeing with,
and that
your
we
recommendation.
should work with the applicant
So
to
to
make
deny-
modifications to mitigate those deficiencies and bring it back for village board for reconsideration.
Yes.
Correct.
I think we might want to say reconsideration. If we're agreeing
Reconsideration,
to, with staff sufficient to deny, we want it brought back for reconsideration right away. So that way we have some
We also have-
memorialization that staff is working with them and we're coming back next week instead of just saying we're tabling this until staff works with the applicant to, mitigate those deficiencies.
Okay, so and work with the applicant to resolve design deficiencies based on staff recommendations, and then bring the item back to the village board meeting August 18th for reconsideration.
I think that might be a better phrasing.
Yeah.
Hi.
But that
All
leaves
those-
out Tim's point.
All those in favor say aye.
Wait, leaves
Oh.
out what?
Remember, Tim put forward the language that we could use to look at this type of situation.
But that could be in we could talk That could be in the future too. We could address that at a future.
That's a more generic
Yeah.
resolution. This addresses the immediate circumstance. I think you're
Yes.
right. So this guy isn't just hanging out there, this applicant. And then in the future, we can talk about modifying in a circumscribed way.
Are we done?
Yes.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Yes.
Say nay.
Nay.
Okay.
You want a
Uh,
real nay?
Motion carries. All right. Um,
You can ask someone to make a motion to take up the item out of order, because that is after the item comes
Prescott, could we have about a 2-minute break?
Yeah, can we have a little bit of recess?
Yes, you can have a 2-minute break.
It's public, yeah. I figured.
Because you weren't here.
No, I appreciate that. No, I figured. Right on my hand.
That's really the only
motion
No,
to
I-
move the item.
Totally agree.
I don't have the rank. I don't have this. Where's that? Oh, okay.
Pause the recording.
We are ready.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to move item 10 up to in front of item 9, please.
So item 10 is the item where we're going to discuss the method for nominating and then selecting the trustee replacement. And I asked Nancy if she would do that because I think we should all agree on the process before we dive into the interviews.
Can you second that?
Sure, I'll second that.
So I'll discuss, unless everybody wants to just blindly approve what I have.
No, I think we should
Vote on the
make it.
Oh, we have to vote on the motion. Okay, so we have to vote on the motion to move the
Second.
agenda item.
There you go.
We had a second.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. So let's talk about the process and then we can do a motion to approve the process. So we have 4 people interviewing and the proposal is somewhat similar to what we did with the 12 to get down to 4. We're going to do all the interviews and then each of the 6 board members is going to rank their choices 1 through 4, with 1 being your most preferred down to 4. We will add up those scores, and because 1 is your top one, lowest score wins. If there's a tie, which is mathematically possible, we'll take the top 2 vote getters, and we will do the voting again. You'll pick the one of the 2 that you prefer, and if there's a majority there, that person will get nominated, and then the board will vote. If there's still a tie, then
Arm wrestle?
rock, paper, scissors, I think was my suggestion. But either, well, I suppose the answer there is we go into closed session and we hash it out to find out who we're going to nominate for a board vote. But hopefully the math will be in our favor and we won't have 2 ties. So there will be little pieces of paper passed out. You have to rank everyone, otherwise it ruins the math. Got that?
Yes, sir.
Got to have all 4 numbers. No duplicating numbers. Can't say all ones. And then Jen is going to add them all up.
Okay, so we all have a sheet like that?
You will not have a sheet like this. This is
Okay.
just the totals. You're going to get one of these,
Oh, okay.
okay? They're nice and small.
You have to write your name on it.
You have to, yeah, don't write somebody else's name on it. And then secondly, this is all public record.
Right.
So your name will be on it, your votes will be on it in case anyone wants to ask for the answers. So you get one, I get 7. Okay. We're doing this once. The math is going to work the first time. So that's the process. Are there any questions or discussion about the process?
Nope.
That was far too easy.
Gonna vote on that?
Yes, we
Okay.
are. May I have a motion to approve that process?
I make a motion to approve the process as described by President Balch.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay. We are done with number 10. Sort of. We're going to have to come back to 10 because it's a duplicate, I mean, it's a and here.
Yes. And then if you do decide to,
Yeah.
to appoint someone at that time, we'll come back to this item
Yes.
and do that.
Okay. So we are going back to 9A. Candidates have been asked to prepare an opening statement of no more than 5 minutes to introduce themselves. After their introduction, the village board will ask candidates 5 pre-selected interview questions. These questions were provided to the candidates ahead of time. And then each board member will be afforded the opportunity to ask any questions, whether they're follow-ups or candidate-specific questions. Because we have 4, and 4 times 25 is a lot, we're going to try to do our best to keep to time. To the degree that you answer any of the 5 questions in your intro, we can blow by those questions when we get to the questions themselves. But let's do our best to keep to 5 minutes, and then we'll try to keep the questions also to the, say, 15-ish minutes for the 5 questions, and then we'll have a few left over for specific questions. With that as a preamble, let's start with candidate interview A, Paula Pintar.
Good evening. I would like to thank you for this interview opportunity for the number 2 trustee position, and I would like to tell you and the community a little bit more about myself. My husband John and I have made our home here in Caledonia for the past 30 years. We raised our family of 3, 2 sons who live in the village and our daughter who lives in Milwaukee. I grew up on my father's Centennial Farm, that is the oldest homesteaded farm that remains a working farm in Florence County. It was there that I learned with my 3 older brothers the pride and responsibility of doing hard work. My parents taught me integrity, respect, and the value of being a good neighbor and what being a good steward of the land means. My father always said, "We don't own this land. It is a gift in which we are responsible to be good tenants and care for it wisely." I've carried these values with me in my professional career as an advanced practice nurse. I spent more than 2 decades working in the ICU, recovery room, and here in Racine County, I provided home care and hospice service to our citizens. Currently, I work for the State Department of Public Health. I have also been in various leadership positions in community health, veterans, Department of Defense, and the academic healthcare settings. These positions help me define my business acumen and management skills. I excel in process and quality improvement, personnel management, as well as strategic planning. Although I may lack formal governmental experience, my professional experience has led me to be elected to serve on my professional organization's National Board of Directors. In addition, I have served in multiple leader positions at our local level within the organization. My upbringing and professional career have taught me the value of respecting diversity in opinions and in people having a foundation that includes empathy and trust. In closing, I love this village, its history, its diversity, and sense of community. It is a wonderful place to raise my family, and I hope to be part of the future in maintaining this culture for others. I hope this short synopsis has provided a better sense of who I am and where I come from. Thank you.
Okay, question number 1. Why do you want to be on the village board?
Well, I would like to be on the village board because over the past year, I have been attending regular board meetings and have observed how our local government was functioning. As I mentioned earlier, although I don't have formal governmental experience or service, I have experience serving at a national level for my professional organization and board of directors. This gives me a solid background to gain further knowledge on local governing. I have learned through my leadership experience, cultures evolve through groups and within boards. And an awareness of a board's internal culture develops, and that culture drives how members communicate, work as a team, and make decisions. There should be cohesiveness, but not detrimental groupthink. The culture can have significant influence on the performance of the board. We are at a juncture to improve our village board culture, and I feel I can bring a new perspective to that development on behalf of our village citizens. I will seek to improve the quality of inquiry, fully engage in respectful discourse in areas of differing opinions, respect areas of expertise, and cultivate thoughtful questions on behalf of the community. I will support community voice to the strategic development of our village. The culture can make or break a board, and I want to be part of the renewed energy that I see and feel starting to ignite in this board. I want to be part of the evolution that embraces productive energy, ongoing development from the status quo, and making sound decisions on behalf of the Caledonia community constituents.
Super, thank you. Are you aware of the commitment involved?
Absolutely. I'm fully aware of the commitment. I see no barriers to my full participation in the board activities and responsibilities. As previously stated, I currently attend board meetings throughout the year. I review the agenda and minutes. If selected, I plan to have more dedicated time to dive into the village workings. And actually, it is very perfect timing as I will be retiring from my full-time professional career and will have time to dedicate to this work.
What do you believe are the top issues facing Caledonia?
I feel the top issues facing our village currently is ensuring thoughtful and informed approach on our village development that meets the citizens' expectations and keeps our village roots as a grounding center. Secondly, I think it's important to maintain our rural agricultural roots of our community while ensuring we are pursuing all available resources through beneficial investments and grant opportunities if available. And thirdly, expanding the awareness of our community's positive attributes and exploring innovative opportunities, understanding the budgetary issues, taxes, and how spending should be transparent.
Super. Last year, Caledonia had a very large project, data center, that created significant concern among residents. What would you have done differently to improve the village's approach?
Yeah, that was quite a situation. I would have approached the situation with transparency and open dialogue. I would have had fostered active inquiry and research into the issue and the project. It's important not to take projects at face value, but to really investigate the process, the project drivers, and the potential outcomes, whether those be negative or positive. Being on this board is a partnership with and for the benefit of the village. The focus is the work for the citizens who live, work, and thrive here. That, in my mind, should never be overlooked. Pursuing active listening, investigations into topics to fully understand the who, what, where, and why the decisions, both large and small, are being made. The process of last year's situation created a lack of confidence and faith in how decisions evolved with our board. This could have led to lasting ramifications, but in the end, the board made the best decision on behalf of the village after hearing their voices. If selected for this position, it will be my personal agenda to bring my skills, knowledge, as well as openness to learn while pursuing advancing our village in the best interest of the community.
Super. Do you have a perspective on another one of our hot topics, Caledonia's use of tax increment financing?
Yes, I do, and this is a very serious situation. I feel the board must take a serious look at and critical look at how and why we engaged with so many TIFs. I think looking at the village history and understanding why and how we made these commitments will assist in making good decisions going forward. The current process has not solved our budget issues, but in fact, placed us on a treadmill that will take time to recover and get out of. I think it's important that we educate the community on how they work and how they can cause difficulty in really achieving any tax relief is really critical for our citizens.
Thank you. All right, now we are going to move to any trustee questions. I'm going to go down the line here, so there's no, there's an order to it. So we'll start with Holly.
Start with Mike.
We'll start with Mike.
I'm pulling
She had a long day.
All right, let's see. Trying to think of something here.
No, targets. Targets.
Yeah, had the same kind of day. Let's see. As far as like park development, what would you see in like development of parks? What would you want to see in parks, especially with this one that we're developing right now?
Well, number one, I have to have a good background of what the park situation is. To be very honest, I think it is part of the rural landscape, and I think pulling in younger families and residential things, areas, parks are important because not everybody has access to the rural aspects of our community. So I think, again, those are areas where input from our community is really valuable. The parks are for the community. And so gaining a better perspective on what is being requested is a place to start. And I think just having a better background on history is where I have a deficit, to be honest with you. So I would have to research that.
Nancy.
I have two. When you look at what happens here in the village, so much of what we do is based in contract, ordinances, or law. Do you feel that your background would give you some advantage in being able to read and understand that type of material?
I definitely think so because I'm with being a healthcare professional, you have to be very thoughtful and you have to research and you have to dive into backgrounds and elements. So I think it's a very prescriptive way of going through things. And so I don't have any problem of being able to comprehend statutes and we do that in my professional organization where we're looking at budgetary, we're looking at strategic planning. It's a not-for-profit group, so you're also working within constraints of those ordinances as well.
Thank you. Do you also, you know that we have several different types of committees that we wander around here with. Is there anything in particular that would draw your interest first? I mean, we have finance, we have Parks and Rec, we have planning. What am I forgetting?
L&L.
L&L, finance.
Yeah.
Legislative and licensing.
Yeah, sorry.
L&L.
Not leisure and love.
I think just with the topic of this evening and what I've seen over the past year, I think finance is really an important area that.
All right. Thank you.
Lee.
Regarding tax incremental financing, one of my favorite topics. Have you had a chance to read the state statute regarding it? And if you have, do you have any suggested changes to that legislation?
That is a good one. I haven't read specific statutes, but I have started to do background in what that means and how that is applied across the state. And I think that is a little bit of it is out of our control because it is a state statute, so we have to work within that realm. But I think from a local perspective, I think we can be thoughtful about how we apply that statute for our community. And again, I think it's educating where that came from. And I have to do more educating myself on that, but I don't think that's not something that's out of my ability. And I think that is where things would drive from a local level, might rise up to a state legislator to make some changes in there. From what I know at this point, it is very complicated and it almost sets you up for failure. So I think looking at that and being able to apply and elevate things where we can from a community.
Thank you. Fran?
We're in the process of redoing our land use plan, which we have to do every 10 years. And that drives the long-range planning, drives where rezoning happens. So do you have a view of overall what that should look like, where development should be encouraged, discouraged, any of that?
Well, coming from a farm family and having those roots, I really don't like to see agricultural be rezoned without a thoughtful perspective, because once we lose that, it's gone. And I look at us as a dairy state, a farming state, and I think it's a very important thing that we keep in front and center in mind. But I also realize the community has to evolve, and I think it's that thoughtful evolution. Where do we want to expand? How can we expand? And how can we expand innovatively, still keeping that rural aspect? I mean, over the past year, we heard many, many comments from our citizens that that's a reason why we have new families coming here, is because of the rural nature. So I think it's really important, again, to get the voice of the community and where do we see the growth happening and where do we see that a potential, and still maintaining our rural nature. I think it's achievable. It's not something that you can rush through, and I think if you have the right discourse and opinions, and I think there's a way forward with that.
Thank you. Holly?
Thank you, Paula. I don't have any additional questions for you.
Okay,
Thanks.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you.
And we kept it to 15 minutes. Okay, Edson Melendez.
Well, good evening. How's everyone doing?
Great.
Long night already. I want to thank you, everybody, for being here tonight, as you always are, and for allowing me to introduce myself in consideration for the position of trustee number 2. My name is Edson Melendez, and I'm here tonight because I am very interested in how I can serve my community. Caledonia holds a very special place in my heart, largely because largely because this is where my wife and I chose to raise our family. Now, she is a Caledonia native. I'm not. Please don't hold it against me. I grew up in southeastern Wisconsin, but a little bit south of here, so you do it that way you will. And we spent some time away from here after graduation. I did my graduate studies, or my undergraduate in Arizona, graduate studies in Chicago, and we were faced with the choice of where are we going to go. We knew that we were going to get married. We knew that we were going to have a family, and we chose to come back to Southeast Wisconsin. We were in Racine for a little while, and then in 2018, when we had outgrown our first home and had a couple kids, we had another very serious conversation about where we wanted to continue raising our family, and ultimately said, well, let's go back to Caledonia. In fact, we live 3 blocks from my wife's childhood home, where my mother-in-law still resides, and that's a lot of fun. No, she's great. We wanted to raise our kids in a place that has a true sense of community. Obviously, a great quality of life and room to grow as they grow, and hopefully, not chase them away, but have them be the next generation of Caledoniaites. Is that what we say, Caledoniaites? So when I say that I'm invested in the future of this village, I mean it quite literally. I'm invested in my family's future, obviously, but also the future of my neighbors and the long-term success of everyone who calls Caledonia home. Professionally, I am the Outreach Program Manager at University of Wisconsin Parkside. As you know, managing large-scale community initiatives takes a mix of careful planning and clear communication. Day to day, I'm responsible for overseeing complex budgets, coordinating diverse stakeholder groups, and leading projects that demand strict accountability and collaboration. Before my time in higher education, I spent a few years working across finance, sales, and insurance. That background really drilled into me the importance of fiscal responsibility, strong organizational systems, and making sure every single resource is managed effectively. Community service is also something that has been central to my life. A lot of my volunteer work has been dedicated to enriching Southeast Wisconsin through the arts, which is my trained background. I was a founding member of a vocal coalition named the Bell Ensemble. We were here for about 10 years. I'm also the founding member and general director of Bruce City Opera, and I currently serve on the board of directors of Racine Symphony Orchestra. Now, while my background is in the arts, it might seem distant from local government. The leadership skills are exactly the same. Running these organizations requires sound corporate governance, fiscal stewardship, and most importantly, the ability to unite people behind a common goal. This goal being making our home the best home that it can be. If you take a look at who I am beyond the arts, I am deeply passionate about fiscal stewardship, responsible fiscal stewardship, supporting sustainable economic development, maintaining our infrastructure, and ensuring public safety. I want to make sure that we preserve the core values that make our village great while planning intelligently for the future. I'm committed to having the best interests of the village residents to be the guiding principle in decision making. When it comes to leadership, I take a very collaborative and pragmatic approach. I don't subscribe to politics and us versus them mentalities. I don't really think it has a place in making successful village growth. Local government succeeds when we listen carefully, speak transparently, and make decisions based on facts and long-term thinking. Our residents deserve leaders who listen openly and carefully, weigh how today's choices will impact the next generation. I'm ready to bring strong work ethic, professional management experience, and continued integrity to this board. I'm eager to collaborate with my fellow trustees, our village staff, my friends and neighbors in Caledonia, and those who I hope to call friends very soon. So thank you for your time and your service, and I hope I kept it under 5 minutes.
Just barely. Good job.
See, that's how good I am at managing. Right in the nick of time.
Leaping into questions, why do you want to be on the village board?
Well, I think I covered some of that already. Honestly, it is a strong desire to serve my community. I think being a member of a community, it's not only a good thing to do. I think it's our responsibility, and I think I have skill sets that can help fulfill that responsibility. My family and my friends are here. I came back not knowing anybody, and now my neighbors around me they're family to me. We have keys to each other's houses, and we've become very, very close in a very short amount of time. And then I really want to see this community thrive and live, long after I'm gone, and do my part to ensure the well-being and the benefit to the residents of this community.
Are you aware of the commitment involved?
I am. I know running boards, being on boards is always a huge time commitment, not just for the time that you're here, but the hours that you put in reading, writing grants, doing this, that, and the other, and really carefully analyzing and absorbing what it is that we're speaking about.
What do you feel are the top issues facing Caledonia?
Well, this TID, TIF thing is one of the things that I think really needs to be worked out, fleshed out. The village growth, I think, is important. Attracting new residents. The village of Caledonia has a demographic which is in need of some new life, and we need to be able to think forward as we make decisions. Obviously, fiscal longevity goes, to that, and then ensuring the well-being and the benefit to the residents is the driving force behind all of the decision making. We have to be thinking about the residents now and hopefully in the future And that has to be central to all of the things that we do, in my belief.
Thank you. Last year, Caledonia had a very large project that created significant concern among the residents. As a board member, what would you have done differently to improve the village's approach?
So some of this is going to come from my personal feelings about it and what I'm hearing from the people that I speak to. And I think there was a lot of reluctance because there was an issue in transparency of the rollout. It also felt very, very rushed. It was like one day somebody said, "Hey, somebody wants to put up a data center," and the next day was like, "We got to vote on this." And it was like, it felt very, very rushed, and it felt like Microsoft was actually driving that conversation more so than you folks. And it's important for the folks to know that you are the driving force. You are the ones who are here. You are the ones who know, our village, our constituency, and who have to live with the very long-term agreements. I think there were issues in communicating what some of the community safeguards were. We all know that data centers, and we hear it in the media, we hear it all over the place, are huge users of resources. But I wasn't sure, it wasn't clear to me and to some of the folks that I spoke with that we had enough safeguards. What happens if they get halfway through this project and they say, "We're out of here"? Well, now we're stuck with a mess. And so I think there may have been more than what was presented or made public or generally understood. And I think that was a huge, huge problem. And then again, besides creating 75 jobs or whatever it may have been, what were the long-term benefits going to be? How are they going to invest back in the community? The resources, were they going to invest back in the infrastructure? What kind of promises were they going to make to us that they weren't going to destroy what we've spent such a long time building here in Caledonia, especially our natural resources that we're very proud of. So I think that those were some of the shortcomings or some things that I would have thought to be a little bit more visible right off the bat.
Okay. Do you have a perspective on Caledonia's use of tax increment financing?
Yeah, I'm not going to pretend to be some kind of expert, accounting expert, fiscal expert on these, but I have been doing more reading, and it just seems that a lot of things seem to be at a standstill. And that's disconcerting because, we currently have one thing where we have to pay somebody, close to $300,000 to wash our hands of it. And so that was, that's concerning to me. When it comes to TIDs and TIFs, I think that they are a great tool, but they have to be measured carefully with the community and the return of investment on these. And be realistic about how much return of investment. It's great to put up a lot of numbers and, we're going to get millions. Okay, but when we look across other communities and stuff, 70% of these don't actually meet, or you're only meeting 70%. So to be on the cautious end of that return of investment number so that we're not overburdening our people at the end of the day. And then obviously measure the impact for the current and future residents. It's great to say this will pay for itself in 30 years, but in the meantime, there will be people who will be affected by this. And we need to think about how that rolls out, how it plays out, and not just the glitter and glam. That being said, I'm not completely opposed to TIFs and TIDs. I think they can be a very, very useful tool, but it has to be detailed and pragmatic.
Thank you. All right, questions? Mike?
Tell me about your time at JPM.
JPM?
Chase.
Oh, so when I first came back to the area, I was at JP Morgan Chase as a banker. It helps that I speak 2 languages, so they were very excited about that. My time there was great in the banking sector, and then they needed help in the HELOCs. So I moved up to to Milwaukee and spent some more time doing the bilingual division of home equity lines of credit and home equity loans. I learned a lot. I was at that time in my first purchasing of homes and stuff, and learned a lot about how lending institutions look at this and about the type of responsible decisions that have to be made, not only from the institution, but by the people who are borrowing this money too. There can be a tendency to abuse the lack of knowledge. Ultimately, that's why I had to leave. I wasn't happy with some of the things that I was seeing. It didn't, in my heart, serve a good purpose. It was setting some people up for failure, and I didn't believe in that.
I do have one, but I'm going to start with by saying my background started in the arts, so you certainly, that actually can be a strong benefit. So thank you for
Absolutely.
being in the arts world. But again, I'm going to come back to contracts and ordinances and language like that. Do you feel that the positions that you've held in the past would actually help you, support you in being able to understand, track, and read those types of documents and apply them? Because we're state level, federal level, as well as local.
Sure. I think a lot of the work that I do at the university is what's helped me get a good grasp on that. Besides my everyday position, I am also on the oh my God, academic staff committee. I was the state rep for a brief time on that. So, working through all of these governance systems and rules and how they tie into what system does versus what we can do, and obviously following the politics of what the state legislature has to say and the impact on the system, so then it trickles down. I think it's given me a good grasp on that. I won't claim to be, Edson Melendez Esquire, but I do feel very comfortable doing that. One of my big projects over the summer has been looking across several governance committees and looking at redundancies, places where we could be more efficient, and maybe even eliminating some of these committees where they are no longer viable.
Thank you.
You said you manage a large and complex budget in your job at Parkside. So have you ever had to go back after you proposed a budget and make cuts to that budget? And if you have, what was your process? How did you go about doing it?
I've been more on the support end of that, not making the cuts myself. What I have done, that I say is, I don't deal too much in the area of proposals for budgets. I get handed a budget and I have to stay within that budget. I have to manage that budget. There, I've been extremely successful. I've come in under budget every single year that we always have. I always like to give myself, a 7% safeguard is stay under by 7%. What that's allowed me to do is carry over budget from year to year and grow one of the big initiatives that I do, and become more and more successful over the years. There have been times where people say, hey, this is what we'd like to do. And I say, well, that's not viable. Okay. So can we have conversations with these artists or, with, whoever we're trying to bring in, or the foundation? Can we have conversations to see if we can come up with something that that meets our needs a little bit better and still allows us to do the projects? So it's a lot of back and forth, but I've not personally been responsible for having to slash anything, thank God.
Fran.
So you're asking now to be appointed as trustee. Have you attended any board meetings in the past?
I have several years ago, but you don't recognize me, so so I can't.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, so I can't say that I have. I do follow. I go in and I read the agendas. I read the meeting notes. A lot of that has had to do with just, my kid has got soccer on Tuesday nights, and this year that changed. I was like, yes. So that just came down to schedule a lot of the time. But yeah, so I follow from afar.
So we are in the process of redoing the land use plan. And do you have any familiarity with what that means?
Well, a lot of that is a designation as to what is considered, residential versus agricultural and then things of that nature. Also, those ongoing projects like the park that's going on behind here, how that's going to develop, and obviously the effects that has on the neighboring areas, because something could be commercial and there's a house across the street, and that's going to affect that. So there's, so how we allocate different zoning and what we want to do to stay true to a village vision. And I don't know if that's very clear.
Okay. What I'm wondering is whether you have a view of what areas should be more commercial and what should be more residential. Do you have a view of where development should occur in the village?
So right now we have a lot of areas that already have a base that were commercial. I'm talking more specifically about that Kmart. Right? I think we need to look at what is already in place so that there is as little redistricting, rezoning as possible. Where's the electric already ready to go? Where's the sewage already ready to go? Those should probably be the more commercial areas. Residential areas also, can be there, but what is going to be the impact of these commercial areas around the residences? So, that brings into question what types of residences are we talking about now? And that gets a little bit more tricky because you can see, by evidence of what happened in Oak Creek, that's generally a commercial area, but they put in some very nice apartments up there, and it really lifted up the area. It brought more stability, commercial stability to that. We have a lot of agricultural land, and I think that for many reasons, partly being that this is Wisconsin and this is how our village came to be. It was really also the work of our agricultural contributors. We need to protect those. So we need to be looking carefully at what impact it's going to have on that. So I guess in short, we need to make sure that we are keeping the commercial as close to where is already set up for it. The residential feeling as residential as the members of the village want it to be. And protecting our resources. There are always going to be issues. There are always going to be times where we say, well, we have to rezone this if we want this other project to happen. But once again, that's a pragmatism thing. And we need to make sure that we're being very careful with the influence it has on, the neighbors, if you will.
Thank you.
Holly.
I'll keep it consistent. Mr. Melendez, it was nice to have a new face in the audience. Thank you for your time. I don't have anything for you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you to everybody for what you do.
David Smetana. What? Smetana. It's got to be Smetana. Is it Smetana?
Smetana?
That is really close. That's actually the old world pronunciation of it.
That's what I was thinking.
Smetana. But
I
it's
hate it when she's right.
super close.
Linguistic major.
She must be Czech. So, as mentioned, my name's Dave Smetana. I want to thank you and the department heads for staying late and going through this critical process on the selection of another trustee to join you up here to make critical decisions which will lead the village. I think you've got my resume. For the people that don't have it in this room, I was born and raised in Southeast Wisconsin, born and raised in Racine. The only time I left was to attend UW Oshkosh, where I spent 4 wonderful years and graduated and came back. Graduated in May of '82. I was married in June of '82, and I bought a house here in Caledonia on Highway 31. in June of '82. So my wife and I raised 2 kids at various locations within Caledonia. We've been here our entire lives. It's 43 years of our marriage. Shortly after moving in here, I took a job as a police officer with the city of Racine. I spent 29, almost 30 years there, moving up through the ranks, retiring in 2012 as a deputy chief of the patrol division. At that time, I took a position in Pleasant Prairie as their chief of police. I lasted 13 years and was able to retire from that position, and I enjoyed every minute of it. So both my sons are police officers too in the area, so it's a services in the family. I think it's from that time through my retirement, I've had various positions which I think are applicable here. And I think that is, as a chief of police, as Chief Bosch should be able to tell you, you're intimately involved in budgets and the working of government. And before we get to the question of, have I ever attended a board meeting here? No, but I've been through a lot of board meetings. We attended those twice a month as well as committee meetings. So I've got intimate knowledge of what happens with that. Not only was the handling a department budget critical, handling the human resource end of it was also critical. Officer wellness is a big topic of mine, and I'm still involved in that service throughout the state with the LEADER team, which is a law enforcement death response team for the state of Wisconsin. It's a not-for-profit group. We travel throughout the state. Anytime an officer is lost in service, our group goes out and assists that agency. So I'm still involved in that type of service. So what I'd like to do is just continue my service, and I think that this is a critical point. I've always looked at municipal politics as the most critical, basically because everybody knows where you live, everybody knows your phone number. The further you get away from this municipality, the harder it is to hold people accountable. Very easy to hold you accountable, as we see in the last elections. People aren't happy, they vote people out. It's very at the surface, and everybody's talking about it. So I look forward to continuing my life in the village, whether I fill this position or not. Part of the reason that I look forward to it is I think I owe the village. So great place to raise a family, great place to live, and now it's time to give back.
I think you answered number 1, but is there anything else you'd like to add to why do you want to be on the village board?
I think the most critical thing is how important local politics is for the development of a community. In my time in my experience with Pleasant Prairie, I saw that play out. I saw a very successful community that was based on respect for the elected officials, trust in the elected officials. There were arguments back and forth, and I got to witness most of those. As a police chief, believe it or not, I took phone calls from angry citizens who weren't happy with what we did. So I was responsible, the same as I would be in this position here.
Thank you. I think you've answered the second one too, that you're
Okay.
aware of the commitment.
I'm just shooting through them. You're right. As I mentioned, my work with the LEADER group, it's obviously it can't be planned out. It happens like at 2:00 in the morning, and we will get called out for a week. So, other than those types of things, my kids are out of the house. They're married on their own. I have no real life besides that. So.
Great marketing. What are the top issues in your view facing Caledonia?
I think smart development is a huge one. And I don't want to keep going back to what I saw, but I grew up in Racine County. I spent a lot of time here. You know, you can't go to any neighborhood party without, or talk to a neighbor without going, what are they going to do with that Kmart? And that Kmart's been, seriously, that Kmart's been open for a long time. I'm looking forward to, and I heard about the strategic plan, the community plan. I'm looking forward to seeing that through for the growth of the village, for the smart growth of the village. Some things are just not going to fit here. This can't be a clone of some other community. It's got its own unique history. It's got its own unique layout. And everybody has a stake in that, whether you're agriculture, whether you're business, or whether you're retail or residential. I think another big fact, Mr. President, is I'm concerned with the imbalance of the tax burden. I see that the vast majority of that burden is laid onto the residents. And I think that smart development and that smart growth is going to make an impact on that. So we start sharing that tax burden. And that way the village can grow as well.
Number 4 is Caledonia had a very large project that created significant concern among residents. Looking back, what would you have done differently to improve the village's approach?
All I saw was negative. When I watched media on that thing, and they came in here and they were talking to people, I'm not just going to, I know the media's here, so I'm not just going to blame the media, but they talked to the people who weren't happy, who didn't want it. There must have been some people who were in favor of this. One of the other applicants mentioned that this thing went very quickly, that there's always time. And I think it's also important to properly vet whether it was this project or any other project, to vet those developers. We always have time to do that. You've got a great staff that will do that for you, that will bring that information forward. So going on to that next question about TIFs and TIDs, I think that's how we handle some of those, not only through a properly vetted long-term village plan, a community development plan, but also one that properly vets who we're going to bring in here to do that. So we don't end up with something down the block from me, the old Olympia Brown site. I think that was a big part of that. I don't think they were vetted properly. I think they had a history, and I don't think that went well. Now, going on to TIFs and TIDs. A lot of experience with watching them happen, and not from my first day at the village of Pleasant Prairie, not having a clue what a TIF and a TID was. It was a matter of sitting down with the village administrator and say, okay, explain this to me like I'm 3. Get the crayons out and draw it out for what it is. And I learned what those were, and I learned how they were used. I learned that the vast majority of them there were successful, but even the successful ones had residents who weren't happy with them because there wasn't enough education there to say, this is what this TID district is going to do. It's not going to do it tomorrow or next year, but we are going to develop based on these community development plans and our long-term plans on how we are going to get there. Boards may change, but that gives us the blueprint of being able to look at it and say, that board had the foresight of looking at this plan. Plans can change, but now you've got that blueprint.
Thank you. All right, questions? Mike?
Let's see. What would you say for park development here? What would you foresee, especially like this park here?
I would like to see parks in, directly associated with subdivisions and neighborhoods. So parents don't necessarily have to jump in a car and drive their kid to a park. That it's, I know when I grew up, there were parks all over the place. We would jump on a bike and go to a park. Or you would be able to walk from your neighborhood to a park. That's what I would be looking for here. I think that's a smart thing to do, is where those families are, and you've got a lot of young families wanting to move here. That's where that recreation should be. I think there's a recreation deficit.
Nancy?
Well, obviously, your background is pretty good on investigative skills, analytical skills, because I understand, of course, coming from the law enforcement background, you're going to be working in the world of ordinances and laws and stuff. How do you feel about jumping in the pool with a group of people who are not coming from that law enforcement background type of rigidity?
I don't think it's, I wouldn't see that as an issue. As a matter of fact, that wouldn't even cross my mind.
Good.
I think you've all had experience. Mine is in public safety. I think you've all had experience with dealing with that. I heard questions come up about legal bills. I dealt with those extensively. Every time you get on the phone with an attorney, there's a charge. That's because they're providing an outstanding service. I think there's a cost associated with that. And if you're either going to pay up front or you're going to pay in the end, and you don't want to pay in the end. You want to pay that up front to make sure you've got that great legal advice coming in.
Thank you.
Yep.
Lee?
Well, a similar question I've already asked, but I've got to ask it. As your tenure as Pleasant Prairie Police Chief, I believe the We Energy facility closed.
It did. Yeah.
And I don't know what impact that had on the tax levy, but did you ever have an opportunity, or were you ever forced to cut your budget? And if you did, how'd you go about doing that?
That was a scary time because it was just like, boom, announced that they're closing. The village already has a new manufacturing center set up in there with a train route coming in. They did the work with the state. They did the work with the company that came in, Smurfit, Raish, I believe the company is. Large manufacturing center. As far as budgeting goes, I was fairly conservative on budgets. 13 years, I don't think I went over on a budget. The village was first very generous in their budgets, but there were always things that came up that you had to look at. So I always, my choice was to always stand back, hold some things in reserve, just in case we had to do something else. Generally, in my early years, the budget for departments was cut off in August. Don't spend anything else. So, but it was a very financially conservative board at that time, but they got us through some issues. So we worked through that. I'm not a finance guy. I didn't go to college to be finance. I went to the FBI National Academy. I didn't take a finance class there. I depend on the experts working in finance to be able to tell me and direct me on how we're going to do that. And then being able to do my own homework on it as well.
Fran?
In your submission, I think you said something about you want to help move Caledonia forward.
Correct.
And I'm wondering what you mean by that.
Well, part of that is, as I mentioned, over 10 or plus years of what's going on with Kmart. What's going on with Kmart? To me, we're kind of locked in. So it's not like a blank slate. Highway 31 would be a great avenue for opening up business. Other areas have done it. Kenosha did it. Mount Pleasant did it. But now there's too many houses and other locations there and farms and stables and things that wouldn't be able to get moved out of the way. So you kind of take that off the table. Douglas Avenue is still right for that, but you're going to have to look at planning 15, 20, 25, 30 years down the road. You've got businesses here. You've got houses here. So it would be great to have a retail corridor, but that's going to have to get planned out seriously by the board and handed down from board to board with that understanding.
Do you have a view of where that might be?
Ideally, I think it would be Douglas Avenue. That's my personal opinion. Now, maybe you guys have already looked at that and went, nah, it's not going to work. And you would coach, and you would coach me on that as to why. I think there are other locations within the village that might possibly work with that too. But again, you've got to have a business-friendly environment. So those businesses and developers want to move here. They want to develop here. And you're going to be attracting the ones that other communities aren't able to attract. So you're going to get your cream of the crop. Just a thought.
I'll ask you the same thing about the land use plan. We are
Sure.
in the process of redoing it.
Glad to hear it.
It does determine long range
Right.
where development happens. So is your answer the same, that it would be Douglas Avenue?
You know, just you're talking to a person who hasn't had much experience with Caledonia and their development. I think that would be a likely way to go, at least from 3 Mile up. I think you've got some area there. You may have some area there that would be usable. There's other areas going west, other roads and thoroughfares going west that may be usable as well. Would some of that eat up some agricultural property that farmers are looking to sell off in their later years? I don't like seeing that either. I like seeing the farms, but we need a balance. The taxpayer in this community needs a balance. The people east of Douglas Avenue matter too. And we need to see a balance in a split between retail, manufacturing, and residential. I don't want to see people get so overburdened with taxes. And I was one of the first ones to call a trustee and say, hey, you guys did an outstanding job plowing the street today. I think that doesn't get translated enough. I think we've got great police department. We've got a great fire department. We've got other great services here in Village Hall. And people are willing to pay for those, but I think it should be more evened out, more shared, you know?
You know a lot about Pleasant Prairie, more than we do probably. So is there anything that you think Pleasant Prairie has done right that Caledonia could learn from?
I think they had a really cohesive board and village government. I think they had a long-term village administrator who really knew his stuff. That was Mike Polikoff. So when I got in there, I was used to politics in a different place. I won't say where. And the silos that were up. When I got down there, is everybody pulling in the same direction. If this department needed this, the other departments chipped in and made sure it happened. That's the environment that our citizens deserve. So I think they had a long-term plan. Now, Highway 50, when I hear from John Steinbring Sr. about what that looked like when he first moved in as a farmer, it was all potato farms, it was cabbage farms. Now it's not. If you've been down to Highway 50, you know it's not. It developed. But it developed based on what we see in the future and how we're going to make that happen. And I'm going way over in my time. I'm sorry.
You're doing
Never
I
give a
asked
chief a
you.
microphone, ever.
I know, but I did ask you. so
You're doing fine.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Holly?
Well, I'll sweep in and wrap it up, and thank you for your service, and
Thank you.
thank you for being in the community this long, and thanks for putting your name.
Yeah, it's
in
a
that.
pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to pronounce this one right, I promise. Jordan Nelson.
Move this. Hello, I'm Jordan Nelson, and thanks for the opportunity tonight. So I wanted to start with the history. I'm a sixth generation consecutive Racine County resident. My family's been here since the start of the county, and they've owned land both in Caledonia, Raymond, and all the way through. So it's a deep, it's kind of an emotional thing for me, just even being up here. It's exciting. But I'm a business owner, so I own a construction company and a development company, real estate development. That's what I do day in and day out. I attend a lot of meetings like this, so, and I'm happy to be a successful business owner and been able to do quite a bit around the nation. I started, my background is in the arts. Actually, I have a BFA, I have an education degree in art, and then I also have my master's in architecture. And I worked on university projects around the country, and then I moved more into the private sector, did that. I actually, one of my first days at Anderson Ashton, I was here because we did this building back in, I think it was finished in 2017, if I remember right. I just started, so hopefully it's been all right, the building. So, I'm a equestrian enthusiast. My wife and I have horses, and she grew up riding, I did too. That's a big part of our life, so that's why we moved here. I have 2 young children, and my wife is pregnant with our third, so we're excited about that. Growing our family here, and this has been a nice, so far. I'm a little newer to the community, but moving back, it's been good. So I'm excited to be here, and that's kind of my intro.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's dive into the questions. Why do you want to be on the board?
Well, I think there is an issue with community welfare. That's what I see right now, and that parlays into development, right? That's part of that tax burden, but also I feel like that, I'm about safety. I've had some of my family members actually have tragic accidents out here. Like my aunt died on a 4-mile and Highway 38 right there at that intersection. So, and that was back in 2005. And it's been interesting to see. I'm glad they're putting the roundabout in there. That's huge, I know that's more of a county issue, but it's exciting to see some of the changes happening. I hope we can keep doing that for the safety of the community. And with development, I think that can help. But that's really why I'm here. Just I have a deep care for this community in this area.
Are you aware of the commitment?
I am aware of the commitment.
Okay.
I know it's loud, but I'm very flexible, which is nice that I own my own business. So.
Sure. And what do you believe are the top issues?
Well, development and, I guess sustainability of a community welfare. And to me, those are the top issues right now. And with that, I think there's a lot of opportunity, as you all know, in Caledonia, and we do hold the cards as a community for development, and I think there's a lot of people that seek this area. I also work in Raymond. We're doing a project there too, so I'm there all the time, working at the Village of Raymond, doing some development and looking at that area. And it's been exciting to see, but make sure we do it correctly. So, but that's, I think, hope I answered that.
Okay. So last year we had a big project, got a little noisy. As a board member, what would you have done differently to improve the village's approach?
Well, I think open communication, people have talked about transparency, but also I think it would have been great to know what the building consisted of and maybe take a site visit and kind of show that to the public. I think that's one of the biggest things that I see as a developer. We go into communities and we don't get enough time to really show them what it is. And I don't know all the ins and outs of a data center. I mean, I've been to some, I've worked on I've been fortunate, people call us about buying our land for them. And, even down in other states that we own real estate. And I don't know enough about it, really. I mean, I know the basics of it. And I took a class in grad school that was called Designing the Cloud. So the whole thing was about that, but it was all subterranean, data centers. And this is now above ground, and I don't know the energy load of the EMF and all, there's a lot that goes into it. And I think that if we can be smart about the materials of building envelope and what that is, I think that's a great use, but I think the location wasn't great, but you see why they wanted to go there, right? Being close to the energies, it made sense, like geographically, but not with the neighborhood. So if we could, I think opening that up for discussion and then, finding a middle ground with the developer would have been a great, but, that's, ship has probably sailed, as we all know now, it's Mount Pleasant, so.
Right. And do you have a perspective on the use of tax increment financing in the village?
Yeah, I do. I've been part of TIDS and TIFs. We've done them worked in Milwaukee and up. I think they're a great tool if you use them correctly, but you have to be careful because, as we all know, it's the trust factor of the developer. If they come through, they're able to deliver, then it would make sense, and it has to be. I've read a lot about it, that, and I don't know the number that, I believe it was F Street was doing those apartments. And I don't know how much they wanted. I don't know all the ins and outs. I don't know what their budget looked like, but I think if you can come to a number that's agreeable, I think that's a good tool to entice development. Now, do we need it in areas? I think it's mostly used, what I've been for is like, if there's an environmental issue, and that usually goes back, and I know there was talk about the statutes. That's kind of what that talks about. That's where it's supposed to be used to clean up or revitalize neighborhoods. And we've been part of that. I've been asked to do that numerous times in multiple different cities across the state. And it's difficult, if it's a real environmental issue, the amount of cleanup that takes. So I think it's a great tool, but it has to be used correctly.
Okay, thank you. Mike?
All right. Let's see. How much did you know about the F Street development? What would you have done differently?
I saw the plans and I read through it. I don't know enough about it because I wasn't at, it's kind of hard to say, but I think I would have, it seemed like concern was, density to me. That's from what I read and hearing and talking to some of the other developers. But I think if they would have made that, I do think it's a good use of that corner. I do, but if you do it correctly, maybe a little more green space. But that's also, I know all developers talk about rising costs, and that is a real thing. I mean, it is. It's too bad. That's an unfortunate reality for even homeowners and home builders. But if they could find, other ways, I don't know. I wasn't designing it, so in my time, I used to design those. I still do. I still do the initial layouts of all our developments, which I probably shouldn't do anymore. And then I send those off to the architects, and we work through it. But I think that, that was the reason I got into development, is because I didn't like what I was seeing out there, and I grew up around here, and I thought, well, hopefully I can make the world a better place. Maybe that's a naive kind of, but I don't know if one development can change social structure, or the construct, but I do believe that there is power in what you design and the aesthetics associated with that. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gone to grad school for that. So,
Nancy?
So I have, excuse me, two questions. One, how do you feel about being able to delve into if a village is having financial issues within budgets and stuff? Do you have some background about when you get into a project that you now may have to back out or deal with or try to find areas that you can go one way or another?
Yeah, so I underwrite all of our own deals, so that's also on my plate. And so we do financial performance. I write through those, and then it's always as you go into a project, right? It's like giving a take on everything a little bit. There's never a straightforward path. And as we do that, yeah, right. What are we going to cut? What are we going to lose? How much more square footage can we gain? But also materials. Like our intention as our company, just from my perspective, is never to make anything ugly. It never is. But what happens is you get so far down the road, and there's a lot of regulations, which can be very helpful and great, but also can be hindering if, so I think even talking tonight, it's interesting to hear, like what variances can you come up with and help work through that. And the board does a great job of understanding that. And that's where I think it could add value to the board also.
Well, since you're a developer and you've heard the magic word of Kmart,
Yeah, right.
since that's your background and you're talking about development, if you were looking at that particular site, is there any type of development that you would pop in your head that this would be a potential thing to discuss, not necessarily go with, but
Well, I think there could be a combination of multifamily and retail, if it was done correctly, where you had first floor retail with, second level multifamily, and kind of make a little town center. That parking lot, is just sitting there. I drive through there all the time. And it just seems like there's so much, we looked at some of these old big boxes. The thing is, reusing them is tough, right? You almost have to tear it down. We did look at an idea once of like, I don't know, there's a lot of different options we could go through, but one was like reusing the front, right, as like a retail space. And then, so you build a separate building out and then kind of have a carport in the inside for people to pick up goods or, that might work, but that would be a lot of traffic through there. So that might not be the best use. I think like multifamily, top, retail, bottom, and then kind of also utilize that parking field that I think is underutilized right now, especially if you had just multifamily, right? You wouldn't need that for Kmart. That's their parking requirement. So,
thank you.
yeah.
Lee?
Actually, Nancy just asked my question. I think she read it off my notes.
Yeah, probably.
I saw her leaning over.
So I don't have any more
All right,
questions.
that's fair.
Yeah, I have been looking at that. I looked at that Kmart years ago. I mean, I keep looking at it until I've talked to Russ as the broker, but you probably know on there. So, and our good friends, and I'm like, what can we do over there? And, I know people talk about like other big box stores in there, right? But realistically, the demographics, it's hard to support that, as you probably know. So,
Fran?
So you talked, when you said the top issues facing Caledonia were, I think, at least my notes say development and sustainability and then opportunity. So what do you mean by that?
yeah, so I think I think there needs to be some type of development. And I joke, being from a farm family, I'm like, well, farmers are the original developers. They are. They came in, that was how it was all westward bound, that's why they came over. But I think there's a good sustainable route for development. And what I mean by that is creating development that can help sustain some of these ever-going expenses, right, that are going to continue on. And I joke with my wife, I'm like, I grew up out here, pretty rural, and we didn't have a lot of stuff. And I'm like, I'm kind of used to that. But most people aren't, so I think that's like the consensus of the majority is that the infrastructure that's provided for them through a community needs to have other ways, to fund that. And if we can keep growing that, sustainably, I guess is my point, not developing, I personally, I love the way it is out here, and if you could develop, along the I and then certain highways and certain, maybe there's certain mile roads that we could, and I do have the land use plan, but, so that's what I mean, defining that more firmly and then kind of sticking to it. Did that
Yep,
answer
that
your
does
question?
answer it, and that
Okay.
really goes to my question that I've been asking before, which is, since we're redoing the land use plan, where do you think development should happen? But I think you just answered that.
Yeah, I used to do master planning too, so we used to help other, I used to do it for universities and some of the municipalities, so. Kind of
Thank you.
Holly?
Holly?
I can't do that to you. I just gotta say thank you and appreciate you being here and come to more meetings and share your experience with us.
yeah, I would love
So-
to, yeah. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Can we take
All
a
right.
break? Can we take a break?
We can take a break, yes. Okay, the process lady over here told me I needed a motion to go back to item 10.
I make a motion to return to item 10.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, we're gonna go do the part of 10 that is after the word and.
All right.
Possible appointment of a candidate to trustee number 2. I will remind you, you are scoring all of them, 1 through 4, with 1 being your first choice.
Okay.
and then you are handing your little piece of paper to Jen.
I don't know why I'm doing it so
Yes,
secretly.
yes,
because
it's
my name.
well, it's
Yeah.
public
Pull
record.
it up.
Yeah.
Oh, public.
Could have wrote like Daffy Duck on it or something.
How many do you have? 4? 5?
4, 5.
Okay. Somebody's always last.
Always me.
So while she's tallying, I just want to say I'm impressed with everybody that showed up. The candidates are all fantastic. Thanks for making the choice really hard for us. But the community will be well served by whoever we choose. And for those of you that are not chosen, there are plenty of elections, but there's also plenty of opportunity to serve your community in various capacities. So we won't forget who you are.
I would like to add to that that I went through this process, as did Nancy Pierce, and I was not selected. And then I ran, and then I won. So you should not conclude, if you're not selected, that you're never going to be a trustee, because you might very well become one.
Thank you. And Jen wanted me to tell you that tomorrow there will be a public test of the voting machines, in case you want to watch that happen.
Oh,
yeah, sounds pretty fun.
It is fun.
No, I was being serious. Did you think I
Well-
was joking?
But even beyond the people that we've interviewed tonight, I think the fact that we had 12 people apply
Right.
for this position is a credit to the community and to the engagement of the people who live here. So my thanks is to every single person who applied.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, it was not easy going through it all. It wasn't, yeah.
Okay, I'll lead with, thank the Lord there is no tie.
There's not?
No.
Oh.
Are you
There's
gonna put it
not
in
a
a,
tie.
are you gonna,
Third.
No, yes, but there's not a tie for,
you gonna put it in an envelope like at the Grammys and like?
no.
hand it?
So I'm just gonna, I am going to ask for a motion to nominate for trustee number 2 replacement with Paula Pintar.
Second, you need a second?
No, I need somebody to
I'll
make
make
a
Oh, I
motion.
nominate Paula Pintar as trustee, as a replacement for trustee number 2.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Paul.
The rest of you again that didn't get selected, that was me 8 years ago.
And don't run out so we can chat with you. You got to sit through the committee of the whole.
I do have a question of procedure. Would you like me to print an oath card and swear them in now, or have them sworn in at the next meeting?
Let's do it now. If we can.
Let's just
Let's just do
swear
it.
her in.
Then it's
Get it over with.
Well,
Before she changes her mind.
well, yeah, and then will she vote on the committee of the whole?
Doesn't she have to accept it though? Is she gonna accept it? The
She
nomination?
applied.
I,
Well,
okay.
But they would not take their seat until the next meeting.
Oh, I am glad there wasn't a tie. 'Cause I did think that might go on.
You got it.
Okay. Since this is
Does
all
she
public
ran
record, where's-
before? She ran.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
And Jan is.
Oh, really? I
She's
didn't
the
know.
one who cover letter.
I didn't know. I just put it on because she ran. And I'm like, oh,
Rather than going back and forth checking to see if it's printed, I'll just read it off of here, so if you want to just put them on up here. here was fine.
Somebody got a camera?
Does somebody have a camera?
Here, Sandy's got one too. Sandy?
You can come up here. Want to
Yeah.
You can put the camera right.
Oh, good
Or
idea.
do you want to have her come back here? So
Yeah.
it's
Have her
better
come
for
back here, so
pictures.
she's back here with us.
And you can.
Okay, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, say your name,
I, Paula Pintar,
having been appointed to the office of trustee number 2
having been appointed to the office of trustee number 2
in and for the Village of Caledonia,
in and for the Village of Caledonia,
swear or attest that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
I swear and attest that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and the ordinances of the Village of Caledonia,
and the ordinances of the Village of Caledonia.
and will faithfully and impartially
I will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
of said position.
of said position.
I did. We are adjourned.